Officials claim grocery supplies are steady, but behind the scenes, a different story is unfolding. Quiet disruptions in farming, markets, and supply chains are starting to impact what we see on store shelves. While public updates stay silent on the matter, certain food items are becoming increasingly scarce or at risk of skyrocketing in price. In this video, we're diving into the hidden grocery list. No one's talking about 6 everyday products that could vanish or cost you double without warning. Stay tuned to find out what's really happening and how it might affect your next shopping trip. 1. Cassava crisis, a silent threat to food security. Cassava, often considered a staple crop in tropical regions, is quietly facing a series of challenges that could have long-term consequences for global food security. While it has traditionally been a reliable source of sustenance for millions, cracks in its supply chain are becoming increasingly evident. Climate change is one of the most significant factors threatening cassava production. According to projections from the FAO's advanced climate mapping tools, rising temperatures, erratic rainfall, and extreme weather events could render nearly half of cassava's most suitable growing areas unviable by 2100. This means that regions currently thriving in cassava cultivation may struggle to sustain production in the future. Pests and diseases are compounding the issue. In East Africa, outbreaks of cassava mosaic disease and cassava brown streak virus are devastating crops, leading to significant yield losses and lower quality roots. Farmers in these regions are struggling to combat these threats, which are further exacerbated by limited access to disease-resistant planting materials. Meanwhile, in Southeast Asia, cassava farmers are grappling with soil degradation caused by years of monoculture farming. Declining soil fertility and the high cost of quality planting materials are pushing many rural producers to abandon cassava altogether or switch to less nutritious and more expensive alternatives. Even in areas where cassava production remains relatively stable, downstream supply chains are under immense pressure. Labor shortages, rising transportation costs, and increased competition in export markets are straining the system. Large industrial buyers, such as those in the starch and ethanol industries, are driving up demand, making it harder for smaller producers to compete. In Nigeria, for instance, factories processing cassava flour and starch are scaling back operations or shutting down entirely due to the influx of cheaper imported substitutes like cornstarch. This has left many farmers selling their crops at a loss or struggling to find buyers at all. Efforts are underway to address these challenges. Researchers are leveraging modern breeding techniques, including CRISPR genome editing, to develop disease-resistant and drought-tolerant cassava varieties. However, these advancements are still in their early stages and may take years to make a significant impact. For now, cassava remains a high-risk item in both grocery and industrial supply chains, particularly in regions heavily reliant on imports or monoculture production. 2. Millets, the fragile superfood. Millets, often hailed as a climate-resilient and nutritious alternative to traditional staples like rice and wheat, are quietly becoming one of the most vulnerable crops in the global food system. These ancient grains, which include varieties like pearl millet, finger millet, and foxtail millet, are celebrated for their ability to thrive in poor soils, require minimal irrigation, and withstand heat and drought. However, beneath the surface, a series of structural challenges is threatening their availability and affordability. While global demand for millets is on the rise, driven by their reputation as a superfood, farmers are finding it increasingly difficult to profit from growing them. Input costs, including seeds, fertilizers, and labor, are rising faster than the market prices for millet products. In India, a country historically known for millet cultivation, the area planted with these grains has declined significantly over the past few decades. Many millet processing units, including factories and cooperatives, are shutting down or scaling back operations as bulk buyers shift their focus back to more traditional staples like rice and wheat. Climate change is another major factor affecting millet production. Studies in West Africa and other millet-growing regions have shown that even these hardy crops are struggling to adapt to modern temperature and rainfall patterns. Some millet varieties are failing under heat stress and drought conditions more frequently than before. While demonstration projects in regions like Karnataka, India, have shown promise in revitalizing drought-stricken farms through millet cultivation, these initiatives are often localized and difficult to scale. Supply chain inefficiencies further complicate the situation. Delays in the delivery of high-quality seeds, transport breakdowns, and inconsistent government subsidies are increasing costs and risks for millet farmers. Despite efforts by organizations like the FAO and IAEA to develop pest-resistant and climate-resilient millet varieties using advanced breeding techniques, the pace of progress is slow. The hidden risk lies in the disconnect between the growing demand for millets as a health food and the fragile economics and policies supporting their production. Without significant intervention, millets could become the next subtle shortage on grocery shelves, leaving consumers and farmers alike to bear the consequences. 3. Tapioca, a starch in short supply. Tapioca, derived from cassava roots, is a versatile ingredient used in everything from specialty foods like tapioca pearls and pudding to industrial applications as a thickener and starch source. However, the supply chain for tapioca is quietly unraveling, putting this essential product at risk of scarcity. In Southeast Asia, a major hub for cassava cultivation, farmers are facing a shortage of planting materials. Stem cuttings, essential for growing new cassava plants, are both scarce and expensive. Additionally, droughts linked to El Niño are significantly reducing root yields, further straining the supply of raw materials needed for tapioca production. Thailand, one of the world's largest exporters of cassava products, is already feeling the impact. Export volumes of cassava chips and modified starch are expected to decline in the coming years due to tighter domestic supplies and rising costs for fertilizers, labor, and transportation. Global freight rates remain high, and port congestion is causing delays, making it increasingly difficult for processors to transport wet cassava roots to factories before they spoil. Small-scale farmers in ASEAN countries are particularly vulnerable. Many lack access to financing, storage infrastructure, and stable market prices for tapioca products. As a result, some are abandoning cassava cultivation in favor of more reliable but less nutritious crops. In Europe, starch producers who rely on tapioca are scaling back production due to competition from cheaper imports, high energy costs, and reduced industrial demand. This has exposed the vulnerability of tapioca's supply chain, which becomes increasingly fragile under upstream pressures. Efforts to stabilize tapioca production face numerous challenges. Soil degradation from repeated monoculture farming, labor shortages, and volatile market conditions are all contributing to the crop's decline. While tapioca remains a staple in many households and industries, its future is uncertain. Without significant intervention to address these underlying issues, tapioca products could quietly disappear from grocery shelves, leaving consumers to seek out less effective and potentially more expensive alternatives. 4. Fragile root vegetables, a hidden weakness. Root vegetables, often overlooked in discussions about food security, are quietly becoming one of the most vulnerable categories in the grocery supply chain. These include everyday staples like ginger, parsnips, celery root, beets, turnips, and radishes, items that are highly perishable and heavily reliant on stable logistics. Unlike grains that can be stored for years, root vegetables have short shelf lives, making them particularly susceptible to disruptions. In California, for instance, organic celery production has been hit hard by persistent plant diseases, damp soil conditions, and delayed field preparation. These challenges have led to reduced yields and early season supply shortages, creating a ripple effect on prices and availability. In India, celery prices have surged by 25–30% compared to the previous year, especially for washed varieties that require more labor-intensive handling and higher transportation costs. Meanwhile, in northern Europe, erratic weather patterns ranging from heavy rainfall to sudden heat waves have severely impacted carrot and turnip harvests. These unstable conditions have allowed soil pathogens to thrive, further reducing crop quality. In Russia, potatoes, often referred to as the country's second bread, have seen prices skyrocket by nearly 170% in some regions. Consumers are noticing smaller tuber sizes and declining quality even before these vegetables reach store shelves. The situation is no better in tropical regions, where ginger and parsnips face logistical challenges such as rising fuel prices, container shortages, and port congestion. These issues make long-haul shipments costlier and less frequent, further straining the supply chain. Farmers in Eastern Europe and Central Asia are abandoning beet and radish production due to collapsing farm gate prices, which in turn causes distributors to reduce their orders, tightening availability even further. The perishability of root vegetables means they rely on consistent refrigeration, stable logistics, and reliable labor at every step of the supply chain. When any of these factors falter, whether due to climate swings, disease outbreaks, or freight disruptions, the impact is immediate and visible. Shrinking shelf space, rising prices, and declining quality are all signs of deeper stresses within the food system. Despite their importance, root vegetables remain a hidden weak spot in grocery supply chains, quietly signaling broader vulnerabilities that officials rarely address. 5. The struggle of fresh greens and herbs. Fresh herbs and leafy greens, often seen as the epitome of healthy eating, are under mounting pressure from a combination of climate stress, disease outbreaks, and logistical challenges. These delicate crops, which include popular varieties like romaine, iceberg, spinach, kale, and fresh herbs such as basil, parsley, and mint, are highly sensitive to environmental changes and supply chain disruptions. In California, Arizona, and northern Mexico, organic lettuce production has been plagued by colder weather, pest infestations, and diseases linked to humidity and sporadic cold snaps. These issues have led to extended supply gaps, reduced yields, and declining quality, making it harder for growers to meet rising demand. Research has shown that elevated CO2 levels and higher temperatures not only affect the growth of leafy greens, but also degrade their nutritional content. Spinach and kale, for example, have been found to lose vital micronutrients like calcium and antioxidants under these conditions. Foodborne pathogen outbreaks, particularly E. coli, have further complicated matters, leading to stricter safety regulations and inspection regimes. While these measures are necessary, they also raise production costs and reduce the number of growers who can meet the stringent requirements. The demand for fresh organic herbs is growing rapidly, but supply struggles to keep pace. Weather delays, border transport holdups, and the short shelf lives of these products exacerbate shortages. Some growers are turning to hydroponic or controlled environment agriculture, CEA, to stabilize supply, but these systems are capital-intensive and come with their own set of challenges, including high energy costs and disease control issues. Import restrictions and biosecurity rules also periodically disrupt the flow of leafy greens across borders, especially when disease outbreaks are suspected. The perishability of fresh greens and herbs means that any delay in transit or storage can lead to significant losses. Refrigeration and proper handling are essential, but these add to the overall cost and complexity of the supply chain. As a result, fresh greens and herbs are quietly becoming some of the most at-risk items in grocery stores. While they may not grab headlines, their growing scarcity and rising prices are a clear indication of the challenges facing modern agriculture and food distribution systems. 6. Coconut products, a cracking supply chain. Coconut-based products, long celebrated for their versatility and health benefits, are facing a series of challenges that threaten their availability and affordability. From coconut oil and milk to desiccated coconut and frozen coconut meat, these items are under pressure from environmental, logistical, and economic factors. In India, coconut oil prices have nearly tripled over the past 2 years, driven by reduced output caused by pest infestations, aging plantations, and increasingly erratic weather. Despite growing global demand for coconut products, production has remained largely flat, creating a supply-demand imbalance that is pushing prices higher. In Vietnam's Ben Tre province, off-season coconut yields have dropped by nearly 50%, squeezing both raw and processed supplies. Desiccated coconut stocks in export markets are dwindling, and spot prices are firming as major producers struggle with dry spells and climate-linked yield downturns. Frozen coconut meat, which is gaining popularity in plant-based foods and ready-to-use recipes, faces significant logistical challenges. Maintaining quality during transport, preserving cold chains, and managing high energy costs are all hurdles that producers must overcome. Indonesia, another major coconut producer, is experiencing domestic supply pressures as more fresh coconuts are being exported. This has raised input costs for local processors who are receiving fewer raw coconuts. In the Philippines and Sri Lanka, production cuts of 10 to 20% are being projected due to weather extremes and labor shortages. Coconut water, a trendy health beverage, is also feeling the strain as fresh coconut supplies struggle to keep up with growing consumer demand. Aging coconut trees, which produce less fruit, are not being replaced quickly enough, further exacerbating the problem. Limited seedling availability and weather patterns like El Niño are disrupting flowering and nut set, reducing future harvests. Coconut derivatives such as coconut sap, coconut sugar, and virgin oil are particularly vulnerable because their production requires high-quality raw inputs and intensive processing. While the global market for coconut products is expected to more than double in the next decade, the underlying vulnerabilities in the supply chain suggest that prices may remain elevated and shortages in certain products could become more common. Without significant investment in replanting, infrastructure, and climate adaptation, coconut products may quietly become one of the most endangered categories in the grocery aisle. Bonus point 7. The hidden struggles of coffee beans. Coffee, the lifeblood of millions worldwide, is quietly becoming one of the most vulnerable commodities in the global food system. While it may not seem like a grocery item at risk, the reality is that coffee beans are facing a perfect storm of challenges that could lead to higher prices and reduced availability. Climate change is one of the biggest culprits. Coffee plants, particularly the Arabica variety, are highly sensitive to temperature changes. Rising global temperatures are shrinking the areas suitable for coffee cultivation, with some studies predicting that up to 50% of current coffee growing regions could become unviable by 2050. In addition to climate stress, coffee farmers are battling an increase in pests and diseases. The coffee leaf rust fungus, for example, has devastated crops in Central and South America, leading to significant yield losses. Farmers in these regions are also struggling with soil degradation caused by years of intensive farming. The cost of fertilizers and other inputs has risen sharply, making it harder for small-scale farmers to maintain their crops. Supply chain issues further complicate the situation. Labor shortages, rising transportation costs, and disruptions in global shipping networks are all contributing to the challenges faced by coffee producers. In some cases, farmers are abandoning coffee cultivation altogether in favor of more resilient or profitable crops. This shift is particularly evident in regions like Ethiopia, where traditional coffee farming is being replaced by crops that can better withstand the changing climate. The result is a coffee supply chain that is increasingly fragile. While consumers may not notice the impact immediately, the long-term outlook suggests that coffee could become a luxury item rather than a daily staple. For coffee lovers, this is a wake-up call to the hidden vulnerabilities in the global food system. Bonus point 8. The silent decline of honey. Honey, often considered a natural and wholesome sweetener, is quietly facing a crisis that many consumers are unaware of. The decline of honeybee populations, a phenomenon known as colony collapse disorder, CCD, is at the heart of the issue. Bees play a crucial role in pollinating a wide range of crops, including those that produce honey. However, a combination of factors including pesticide use, habitat loss, and climate change is causing bee populations to plummet. The impact on honey production is already being felt. In the United States, honey yields have been declining steadily over the past decade. Beekeepers are reporting higher rates of colony loss, with some losing up to 40% of their hives each year. This has led to a significant increase in the cost of honey production, which is being passed on to consumers. In addition to the challenges faced by honeybees, the global honey supply chain is grappling with issues of fraud and adulteration. Low-quality honey, often mixed with sugar syrups, is flooding the market, making it harder for consumers to find pure, high-quality honey. This problem is particularly acute in countries like China, where large-scale honey production often prioritizes quantity over quality. Efforts to address these challenges are underway. Beekeepers and researchers are working to develop more resilient bee populations and improve hive management practices. However, these solutions take time, and the outlook for honey remains uncertain. For consumers, the decline of honey serves as a reminder of the interconnectedness of our food systems and the importance of protecting pollinators. Bonus point 9, the disappearing world of spices. Spices, the cornerstone of global cuisine, are quietly becoming one of the most at-risk categories in the grocery aisle. From black pepper and cinnamon to cardamom and saffron, these flavorful ingredients are facing a range of challenges that threaten their availability and affordability. Climate change is a major factor. Many spices are grown in tropical regions that are highly vulnerable to rising temperatures, erratic rainfall, and extreme weather events. Take black pepper, for example. This spice, often referred to as the king of spices, is primarily grown in India, Vietnam, and Indonesia. In recent years, these regions have experienced unpredictable weather patterns that have disrupted pepper production. Heavy rains followed by droughts have led to lower yields and reduced quality, making it harder for farmers to meet global demand. Cinnamon, another popular spice, is facing similar challenges. Grown primarily in Sri Lanka, cinnamon production is being affected by deforestation and soil degradation. Farmers are finding it increasingly difficult to maintain their crops, leading to a decline in both quantity and quality. Cardamom, often called the queen of spices, is also under threat. This labor-intensive crop requires specific climatic conditions to thrive, and changes in temperature and rainfall are making it harder for farmers to cultivate. The spice trade is further complicated by supply chain issues. Rising transportation costs, labor shortages, and geopolitical tensions are all contributing to the challenges faced by spice producers. In some cases, spices are being adulterated with cheaper substitutes to meet demand, leading to concerns about quality and authenticity. For consumers, the disappearing world of spices is a stark reminder of the fragility of our food systems. These ingredients, which have been traded for centuries, are now at risk of becoming luxury items rather than everyday staples. Protecting the future of spices will require a concerted effort to address the underlying challenges, from climate change to supply chain inefficiencies. Bonus point 10, the fragility of rice varieties. Rice, a staple food for more than half of the world's population, is quietly becoming a high-risk commodity. While it may seem like a resilient crop due to its global prevalence, the reality is that rice production is under immense pressure from climate change, water scarcity, and shifting agricultural practices. The most vulnerable varieties of rice are those that require specific growing conditions, such as basmati and jasmine rice, which are highly sensitive to temperature fluctuations and water availability. In South Asia, where basmati rice is a cultural and economic cornerstone, erratic monsoon patterns are wreaking havoc on production. Excessive rainfall during critical growing periods leads to waterlogging, while prolonged dry spells cause drought stress. Farmers are finding it increasingly difficult to predict planting and harvesting schedules, which has led to lower yields and reduced quality. In Southeast Asia, jasmine rice faces similar challenges. Rising sea levels are causing saltwater intrusion into rice paddies, rendering the soil unsuitable for cultivation. Adding to the problem is the growing competition for water resources. Rice is one of the most water-intensive crops, and in regions where water scarcity is becoming a critical issue, farmers are being forced to reduce their rice acreage. This is particularly evident in countries like India and China, where urbanization and industrialization are diverting water away from agricultural use. The global rice supply chain is also feeling the strain. Rising transportation costs, labor shortages, and export restrictions are making it harder for rice to reach international markets. In some cases, countries are hoarding their rice supplies to ensure domestic food security, further tightening global availability. For consumers, this could mean higher prices and fewer options on grocery shelves. Efforts to develop drought-resistant and salt-tolerant rice varieties are underway, but these solutions are still in their infancy. For now, The fragility of rice varieties serves as a stark reminder of the challenges facing global food systems. Bonus point 11, the decline of nut crops. Nuts, often celebrated for their nutritional value and versatility, are quietly becoming one of the most at-risk categories in the global food system. Almonds, walnuts, pistachios, and cashews are all facing a range of challenges that threaten their production and availability. Climate change is a major factor, as nut trees require specific climatic conditions to thrive. Rising temperatures, erratic rainfall, and prolonged droughts are making it increasingly difficult for farmers to maintain their orchards. In California, which produces more than 80% of the world's almonds, water scarcity is a growing concern. Almond trees are highly water-intensive, and with the state experiencing frequent droughts, farmers are being forced to make tough decisions about which crops to prioritize. Some are abandoning almond cultivation altogether, while others are investing in expensive water-saving technologies that drive up production costs. Walnuts and pistachios are facing similar challenges. In regions like Iran and Turkey, which are major producers of these nuts, erratic weather patterns are disrupting flowering and nut development. Late frosts and unseasonal rains are causing significant yield losses, while rising temperatures are affecting the quality of the nuts. Cashews, which are primarily grown in tropical regions, are also under threat. In countries like India and Vietnam, cashew trees are struggling to adapt to changing weather conditions, leading to lower yields and reduced quality. The nut supply chain is further complicated by labor shortages and rising transportation costs. Harvesting nuts is a labor-intensive process, and in many regions, farmers are finding it increasingly difficult to hire workers. Export restrictions and trade disputes are also adding to the challenges, making it harder for nuts to reach international markets. For consumers, the decline of nut crops could mean higher prices and reduced availability. While nuts are often considered a luxury item, their growing scarcity highlights the broader vulnerabilities in our food systems. Bonus point 12. The vulnerability of dairy products. Dairy products, a staple in many households, are quietly becoming one of the most fragile categories in the grocery aisle. From milk and cheese to butter and yogurt, the dairy industry is facing a range of challenges that threaten its stability. Climate change is a significant factor, as rising temperatures and extreme weather events are affecting both the quality and quantity of milk production. In regions like Europe and North America, heat stress is becoming a major issue for dairy cows. High temperatures reduce milk yields and affect the overall health of the animals, leading to increased veterinary costs and lower productivity. In addition to climate stress, the rising cost of feed is putting pressure on dairy farmers. Corn and soybean prices, which are key components of cattle feed, have been rising steadily, making it more expensive to maintain herds. Labor shortages are another challenge facing the dairy industry. Milking cows and managing dairy farms require skilled labor, and in many regions, farmers are struggling to find workers. This is particularly evident in countries like the United States, where immigration restrictions have reduced the availability of farm labor. The dairy supply chain is also feeling the strain. Rising transportation costs, packaging shortages, and logistical disruptions are making it harder for dairy products to reach consumers. In some cases, farmers are being forced to dump milk because they cannot get it to market in time. Efforts to address these challenges are underway, with some farmers investing in technology to improve efficiency and reduce costs. However, these solutions are not accessible to everyone, particularly small-scale farmers who lack the resources to make significant investments. For consumers, the vulnerability of dairy products could mean higher prices and fewer options on grocery shelves.